when I was kind of in the height of my addiction, um, I was on my way to Atlanta, or actually Florida, for a bachelor party. And I was burning through Atlanta at the time, middle of the day, so I was trying to get down there and meet the guys. And I was driving a sports car at the time and just flying, just like 85, 90 miles an hour. There's no one really on the road because I was leaving Atlanta. And I look up and there's this girl driving a very nice sports car right behind me, like tailing me almost. I'd switch lanes and she'd switch lanes and there's no one else around. She was attractive. And my mind started running. Started coming up with this whole story about how she saw me and now she's following me and a bunch of crap, right? Not even real. So I worked myself up to the point where I convinced myself that I'm going to take an exit and we're going to meet at some gas station and something's going to happen, right? So I take the exit and she just flies by me, keeps going on down the highway. And I realized in that moment that what she was doing was using me as a deterrent to a speeding ticket, right? So a police officer would tag me first. She'd have time to slow down, kind of thing. And I sat on that exit ramp feeling like a fool, just feeling like a fool in that moment, like, what in the world? But what's interesting also is I would then go down to that party, that bachelor party, and it was just chaos, right? Not a good situation, not a good environment. You think at that point it would kind of wake me up, right? Where I go, oh, wow, this is a problem. This is terrible. But no, not how it worked out. The point is that our mind in that moment can be shook loose. But unless we're doing recovery work, unless we're in that place where like, okay, I've got to make some changes in my life, we just kind of seep back in. And you guys have noticed this, right? You guys know this. You've experienced it with the cycle where you get this urge to act out, you fight it. And I've talked about this before. I've done this cycle in here. You fight it, you act out, never going to happen again. I can't believe I did that. But because we don't deal with the roots of the issue here, right? Address why it happened, right? What happened, why it happened, what we're going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again. Eventually it just ramps back up and we get right back in the same space. So even though I had this moment where I was embarrassed and just like, how silly you were, later in the weekend, I was right back to acting out. Because again, I didn't deal with anything there. If we are not dealing with the root of the problem, then it will return over and over and over again, right? You think about an infection. If I'm not treating that wound, it's just going to continue to get worse. Or if I take a little bit of antibiotic, then I quit, don't take the full course, it comes back, right? This is a continuous problem. And then we also have this understanding that even in that space, that in being embarrassed and realizing how crazy our mind got out of control, is kind of a wake-up call, right? Slap to the face. You have to look at it and go, man, am I going to slide back into that behavior again? Because again, if we're not dealing with the why, then it's going to happen. It will happen again. Right? And this is why it's so important that when something happens, when we have a slip up or have a moment like, what happened? Why did it happen? And what am I going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again? And a lot of times what we do is go, I'm going to try harder. I'm going to do better, with no real intentional action plan to make that happen, which means we're just going back to the willpower, relying on willpower to get us to where we need to be. That's not reality. That's not how it works. You have to deal with the reason. So you may have these moments where you're like, man, that was really embarrassing, or wow, that was really hard, or I can't believe I went down that path, or whatever. But you have to follow it up with, oh, I'll just do better next time. It's not going to work. You have to dive in and understand what happened. Our mind can get out of control sometimes, right? We have to dive into what's going on and understand what happened. How'd I end up here? Otherwise, you are destined to do it again. You will, right? If you haven't dealt with the reason that you acted out, you will slide back into that behavior again. It will happen. So it's something that we want to be very clear on and very much pay attention to.